Hello viewers, warm greetings of the day. I'm Dr. Sharanjeet, Professor of Law at Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law, Punjab. Before undertaking the journey on the origin and development of the law of torts in India, we need to understand what exactly is a tort. The word tort is derived from the Latin word tortium, which means twisted or crooked. Under the English law, it was referred to as a wrong, whereas under the Roman law, it was expressed as delict. A person who commits a tort is called a tortfeasor. The law of torts developed as a separate branch of law and governed the remedies for civil wrongs. This law assumes significance as it makes a person liable for the wrongful act, whether done accidentally or intentionally. The injured or the aggrieved person is entitled to compensation through the payment of unliquidated damages. Now we shall focus upon the origin of the law of torts in India. Keeping in mind the significance of this branch of law, it becomes highly imperative to discuss the origin and development of the law of torts as a branch of legal studies in India. As we all know, that law is a body of rules which is essentially required to maintain social order and to regulate the conduct of individuals in the society for a harmonious social, political, economic and cultural existence of people in the society. The tort law is supposed to be evolved from the maxim ubi jus ibi remedium, which means where there is a right, there is a remedy. Wrongs can be divided into civil and criminal wrongs. Historically, the concept of crime and tort were the same, and the difference between the two emerged much later after the emergence of the institution of the state. The primitive societies did not recognize any difference between the law of crime and the law of torts, and interestingly, both were referred to as the law of wrongs. In this regard, it is important to discuss Frederick Pollock and Maitland, who observed that the English society prior to the 10th century confused crimes with the torts because the bond of family was far stronger. The concept of private vengeance was practiced, and the injured party and his kin could avenge the wrong by private vengeance. During this period, recourse to legal remedy was considered merely an option. The wrongdoer was supposed to offer compensation to the person wronged, and the quantum of the compensation was dependent upon the actual harm caused and the status of the sufferer. With the passage of time, the state became more powerful. And instead of private revenge, people started seeking justice for the wrong done to them through the intervention of the state machinery. As the law grew and developed, the concept of justice also expanded its tentacles to different spheres of human activities, and today we have civil justice, criminal justice, economic, social, and political justice, and so on. If we look at the international perspective on the origin of the law of torts, reference to Roman law is very important. The existence of the rudiments of the modern tort law may be found in the ancient Roman law of delicts, which meant a private wrong for which the proper remedy was reparation or award of damages. Here it is significant to note that the entire law of delicts was codified by Justinian in the 6th century, and the whole law once again revived in the 12th century, and it was adopted by many European countries such as France, Germany, Holland, Scotland. The Napoleon Code of 1804 was basically modelled on the Roman law of delicts. Dear viewers, it is important to note that the law of torts is based on the principles of common law, which is the English law of torts. However, it is important to note that the Indian courts selectively enforced the English law of torts, keeping in mind their compatibility with the Indian culture and circumstances. Turning the pages of history, now we shall look at the law of private wrongs in ancient India. In the ancient Indian society, dharma, which is the duty of the people, was most important than the rights of the people. The dharmas originated from the Vedas. Dharma is defined as an individual's moral and social obligation towards fellow individuals and the society at large. Interestingly, dharma regulated human behavior during the ancient times. Smritis, the Code of Manu and Yajnavalkya, and various commentaries compiled by Narada, Vyasa, Brihaspati, and Katyayana furnished a detailed account of the law of private wrongs and damages prevalent in ancient India. The ancient Hindu law recognized the institution of king or state as the most prominent and powerful. The king exercised full control over its subjects. Here it is important to note that the entire scheme of civil and criminal law, as described by Manu under 18 heads such as gifts, sales, partnership, assault, defamation, theft, and robbery, however, recognized the right to recover compensation in two cases, namely, one, damage to the crops by trespass of cattle, and secondly, for bodily injuries and damage caused to the goods, whether intentional or otherwise. It is important to note that there was no scope for private vengeance or retaliation in the ancient scheme of justice. However, non-payment of debt or breach of contract which gave rise to civil action or cause of action were regarded as crimes punishable by the king. The digest prepared by Veera Mitrodaya and Vyanhara Mayukha contain qualitative details on a variety of topics relating to the law of private wrongs, including injuries to personal property, trespass, fraud, deceit, bailment, negligence, measurement of damages and defences, which form the subject matter of the modern law of torts as well. Interestingly, the ancient Hindu law of torts differs from the present law of torts in one major aspect, as it recognized the right to compensation only in cases where plaintiff suffered monetary loss and not in other cases like assault, false imprisonment, insult, defamation, which were regarded as punishable offences and did not give rise to a cause of action in the law of torts. Dear viewers, presently a person can claim unliquidated damages even when the harm or injury suffered by him or her is not physical in nature. It is very important for us to note that the law of torts as administered in India today has its origin in the colonial era. The first British courts established in India were the Majesty courts in the three presidency towns of Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay. These courts were established in the 18th century, and the charters which established them required them to give judgment and sentence according to justice and right. The Englishmen administering these courts normally drew upon the common law and statute law of England as found suitable to Indian conditions while deciding cases according to justice and right. This led to introduction in this court's jurisdiction of the English common law and statute law in force at the time so far as it was applicable to the Indian circumstances. Significantly, the following branches of the law of torts have been codified in India by the British rulers. Starting with the Indian Carriers Act of 1865, this act dealt with the rights and liabilities of the common carriers in India. Whereas it was considered expedient not only to enable common carriers to limit their liability for loss or damage to property delivered to them to be carried, but also to declare their liability for loss of or damage to such property occasioned by the negligence or criminal acts of themselves, their servants or agents. Later on, this act was repealed. The next is the Cattle Trespass Act of 1871. Cattle trespass was an ancient common law tort whereby the keeper of a livestock was held strictly liable for any damage caused by the stray livestock. Under this act, any owner, keeper, or attendant of cattle who neglected or otherwise damaged or caused or permitted to be damaged any land or any crop or produce of land by allowing such cattle to trespass there was held liable. The next significant colonial era legislation is the Easement Act of 1882. This act is important because it gives a legal right or privilege to the owner of a property over the property of another person. According to Section 4 of the Indian Easements Act 1882, an easement is a right that the owner or occupier of a specific piece of land has in order to use that land in a beneficial manner by doing or continuing to do something on it or by stopping something from happening on another part of land that is not his own. The right to easement can be either positive or it can be a negative one. Next is the Fatal Accidents Act of 1855. Listeners, this act was legislated to provide benefit of compensation to the dependents in the case of loss caused by the death of an individual through actionable wrong. This act clearly stated that when any death caused by a person due to his wrongful default or negligent action, he shall be made liable to get sued for damages. The legal proceedings should be on behalf of the dependents of the deceased who died due to the fatal accident. Next, we shall reflect upon the Specific Relief Act enacted way back in 1877. Listeners, specific relief is a positive remedy and it aimed the fulfillment of an obligation and obtaining of the thing for which a person is entitled under a contract and of which he has been deprived. It fell within the domain of equity in the civil courts. The main objective of specific relief was to discourage people from taking law into their own hands. Next is the Workmen Compensation Act of 1923. The basic aim of the Workmen Compensation Act was to provide for the payment by certain classes of employers to their workmen of compensation for injury by accident during the course of employment. This was essentially a social security legislation. This act aimed to provide workmen and or their dependents some relief in case of accidents arising out of and in the course of employment and causing either death or disablement of the worker. Similar to this, the next law was the War Injury Compensation Insurance Act of 1943. The basic objective of this act was to impose on the employers liability to pay compensation to workmen sustaining injuries and to provide for the insurance of employers against such liability. Now we shall discuss the post-independence laws dealing with the tortious liability. We shall start with the Specific Relief Act of 1963. This act provides remedies for persons whose civil or contractual rights have been violated. The remedies that may be granted by the court under this act are recovery of possession of property, specific performance of contracts, rectification of instruments, rescission of contracts, cancellation of instruments, declaratory decrees, and injunction. This act provides remedies for persons whose civil or contractual rights have been violated. Interestingly, this act repealed the Specific Relief Act of 1877. The Bhopal Gas Leak Disaster Processing of Claims Act 1985 was meant to settle the claims of the victims of this deadly leakage of a chemical in the Union Carbide plant in Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. As per estimates, over 5 lakh people in the small towns around the plant were exposed to a highly toxic gas. A large number of people died in this industrial disaster and many were injured. The Indian Parliament enacted the Bhopal Gas Disaster Processing of Claims Act to confer certain powers on the central government to ensure that the claims arising out of or connected with the Bhopal gas leak disaster were dealt with swiftly, effectively, equitably, and to the best advantage of the claimants. Next very significant legislation is the Consumer Protection Act. This legislation is regarded as the Magna Carta in the field of consumer protection for checking unfair trade practices, defects in goods, and deficiencies in services in the country. This act led to the establishment of a large number of consumer forums and consumer courts all over the country. The Consumer Protection Act imposed strict liability on a manufacturer in case of the supply of faulty goods by him and strict liability on a service provider in case of shortage in rendering the services. Furthermore, this act has been amended from time to time in order to make it more responsive to the needs of the consumers. Next, we shall discuss the Motor Vehicle Act of 1988. Dear viewers, the Motor Vehicle Act was passed in the year 1988 by the Indian Parliament to regulate almost all the aspects of road transport vehicles. It has provisions for traffic regulations, vehicle insurance, registration of motor vehicles, controlling permits and penalties. This act has been amended from time to time to improve its efficacy. The different violations of this act are illegal parking or improper number plate, driving or riding without a license, driving or riding under the influence of an intoxicating substance, overspeeding, driving without a seat belt, violating the rules and regulations, dangerous driving, rash driving, jumping the red light, driving or riding while on the mobile, speeding, racing, not giving way to emergency vehicles like ambulances, fire engines, riding without a helmet, overloading two-wheelers, driving or riding despite disqualification, driving or riding without a ticket, unauthorized use of vehicles without license, disobedience of orders of the authorities, vehicles without permit, and oversized vehicles, to name a few. Next is the Carriage by Road Act of 2007. This act was notified in 2007 with a view to replace the old act by keeping in mind the changes and needs of the modern times requirements of trade and transport by the road. This act provides for mandatory registration of common carriers and persons involved in transportation business on roads, including goods booking company, contractor, agent, broker, etc. The liability of the common carriers in case of loss or damage to the goods shall be prescribed under the rules. The common carriers shall be liable for the offence of overloading and shall be punished in terms of Section 194 of the Motor Vehicle Act 1988 at par with the drivers or owner of the motor vehicle. The carriage by road rules were notified in the year 2011. In the end, I would like to say that as discussed above, the law of torts have evolved in India not only from the concept of dharma and restitution by the wrongdoer to the aggrieved. When the British came to India, they applied the English law of torts, keeping in mind the diverse socio-cultural and traditional practices in India. The British also codified certain laws relating to torts to deal with specific situations like cattle trespass, easements, and employees' insurance, to name a few. In the end, I would like to say that the law of torts cannot develop in our country until and unless the various impediments and roadblocks as discussed above are removed. We all have to ensure that the law in books reflects the law in action also, and whenever a person has been wronged under the law of torts, he or she is able to avail a timely remedy as provided by the law. Thank you.